In the trembling glow of a Detroit kitchen, a mother's cold whisper shattered the night. Claire deserves it more. She's the child we couldn't lose again. But what dark secret festers beneath the basement's locked door, where shadows whisper and metal screams? A stolen life, a deadly trial, and a twin's betrayal wait to unravel. Will the truth save them or bury them all? Smash that subscribe button now. We're racing to 1,000 subs, and your click could unlock the next shocking twist. In the flickering glow of the Harper family kitchen, Lydia Harper stood clutching her freshly minted medical diploma, the parchment trembling slightly in her hands. The Detroit night pressed against the windows, a cold March wind rattling the panes, but it was her mother's voice that cut deeper than the chill. Marian Harper stood by the counter, her back turned, deftly arranging a tower of red velvet cupcakes for tomorrow's celebration. Claire deserves it more, she said, her tone flat, final, like a judge's gavel. She's the child we couldn't lose again. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp, slicing through the silence. Lydia froze, her chest tightening as if someone had stitched it shut with surgical thread. But then, from the basement below, a sound. A metallic screech, like a crowbar scraping against a lock. It wasn't the first time she'd heard it tonight. Her eyes darted to the basement door, cracked open just an inch, shadows pooling beneath it like spilled ink. Something was down there. Someone. And as she turned back to her mother, a glint caught her eye. A mirror in the hall, smeared with a message in scarlet lipstick. "Don't dig deeper, Harper." Her breath hitched. This wasn't just a family secret buried in decades of favoritism. It was a living nightmare clawing its way up from the past. A stolen research file? A hidden urn of ashes? A twin sister's fragile loyalty? And now, a threat that felt like it could end her before she unraveled it all. "If this tale of blood and shadows grips you," Lydia's voiceover broke in, urgent and raw, "smash that subscribe button right now. We're racing to 1,000 subs, and your click could unlock the next twist in this messed up story." The screen flashed with a quick subscribe animation, then cut back to her standing in that dim kitchen, the diploma now a shield against her chest. "Mom," Lydia said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. "We graduated together. University of Michigan Med last week. Same 4 GPA. Same sleepless nights. Why do you and Dad pay off Claire's $150,000 loans and leave me with $120,000 of my own?" She hated how small she sounded, how the question dangled like a plea she'd swallowed her whole life. Marian didn't even look up, her hands smoothing frosting swirls with surgical precision. A retired nurse's habit never lost. "Claire needed it more, honey," she murmured, as if explaining why the sky was blue. Thomas Harper stepped in from the hallway, his broad frame filling the doorway, his graying hair catching the light. He adjusted his glasses. Chief surgeon at Detroit General, always composed, always diagnosing. "You've always been independent, Lydia," he said, his tone clipped, practical. "Claire doesn't have a fancy mentor like Dr. Voss pulling strings for her. You'll figure it out. You always do." Independent, that was their word for it. Their excuse for skipping her undergrad thesis defense while flying to Claire's debate nationals in Texas. Their reason for handing her a $20 gas card on her 21st birthday while Claire drove off in a gleaming Ford Mustang. And now, their justification for wiping Claire's slate clean while Lydia drowned in debt she'd clawed through med school to earn. She wanted to scream, to demand why Claire's perfect transcript and volunteer hours outshone her own identical grind. But the weight of their indifference pinned her down, a familiar suffocation she'd carried since they were kids. The cupcakes sat there, a sugary monument to Claire's debt-free triumph. A rooftop party planned with embossed invites screaming, "Celebrating Dr. Claire Harper's success" in gold foil. No mention of Lydia, the other Dr. Harper who'd dissected the same cadavers, aced the same exams, and stitched patients through the same brutal nights. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. "I don't get it," Lydia said finally, her voice cracking like ice underfoot. "We're twins, Mom, 6 minutes apart, same brain, same fight. How does Claire deserve it more?" Marian sighed, a flicker of exasperation crossing her face, the kind reserved for a kid asking too many whys. "Claire's always been the determined one," she said, her eyes finally meeting Lydia's. "You've had your distractions, your lab projects, your books. She's pushed harder." The lie was so blatant, Lydia almost laughed. Distractions? She'd spent high school summers holed up in the Detroit Public Library, poring over neurology texts while Claire partied at Lake Michigan. She'd logged 20-hour shifts under Dr. Voss, while Claire sipped hot cocoa on ski trips with their parents. If anything, Lydia had fought longer, harder, with no net to catch her. Thomas cleared his throat, a signal to end it. "No one's punishing you, Lydia. We're being practical. Claire needed the boost. You've had advantages. She didn't." Advantages. The word twisted in her gut like a rusty blade. Dr. Evelyn Voss hadn't handed her anything. She'd earned that mentorship. Beating out dozens with her research on neural repair, Claire had the real advantage: parents who flew cross-country for her, who hired tutors when she flunked biochem, who threw her a damn gala while Lydia scrubbed blood off ER floors for minimum wage. "I've got an early shift," Lydia muttered, grabbing her worn leather satchel, the diploma slipping under her arm. "Will you make it to Claire's party?" Marion asked, a hint of worry in her voice. Not for Lydia, but for how her absence might dim Claire's spotlight. "I'll be there," Lydia said, the promise sour on her tongue. She stepped into the biting Detroit night, the wind clawing at her cheeks as she fumbled for her keys. Her beat-up Chevy sputtered to life, but something caught her eye, a crumpled paper fluttering from Thomas's coat pocket as he'd hung it up. She snatched it before it hit the gravel, a yellowed hospital receipt dated March 3rd, 1998. James, clinical failure. Her pulse skipped. James. As she tossed the paper onto the passenger seat, that metallic screech echoed again from the house. This time sharper, closer, followed by a low, labored whisper drifting up from the basement stairs. Her headlights caught the basement window for a split second. A shadow moved, quick and deliberate. Her hands tightened on the wheel. This wasn't just about money or favoritism anymore. Something was alive down there. Something her parents didn't want her to find. And that scarlet thread on the mirror, it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back. A text from Dr. Voss. "Grayson Fellowship news, meet me ASAP. Urgent." Urgent wasn't Voss's style. Lydia's knuckles whitened as she floored the gas, the Harper house shrinking in her rear view. Marion's words looped in her head, the child we couldn't lose again. What had they lost before? And why did it feel like the answer was about to cost her everything? The basement whispers faded into the night, but the receipt burned in her mind. James. A name she'd never heard, a ghost she couldn't shake. She didn't notice it then, but tucked in the corner of the receipt was a faded scrawl, JH98. A code? A mistake? Or the first thread of a tapestry of lies her family had woven long before she and Claire took their first breaths? The Chevy rattled down Woodward Avenue, the Detroit skyline a jagged scar against the bruised sky, and Lydia knew one thing for sure: whatever was down in that basement wasn't staying buried much longer. Lydia Harper's Chevy rattled down Woodward Avenue, the Detroit skyline a jagged scar against the bruised March sky. The crumpled hospital receipt, James, clinical failure, lay on the passenger seat, its faded ink searing into her mind. Her mother's words, "the child we couldn't lose again," looped like a broken record, each repetition tightening the knot in her chest. Who was James? And what the hell was that shadow in the basement? The metallic screech and whispered breaths clung to her like damp fog, but her phone's buzz yanked her back to the present. Dr. Evelyn Voss's text glowed on the screen. "Grayson Fellowship news. Meet me ASAP. Urgent." Urgent. That wasn't Voss's style. Calm, calculated, unflappable. Something was wrong. She pulled into the parking lot of Michigan Med's research wing, the brutalist, concrete building looming like a fortress under the sodium streetlights. Her boots crunched gravel as she hurried inside. the diploma still tucked under her arm like a talisman. Dr. Voss's office was a sanctuary of order, walls lined with framed awards, shelves sagging with leather-bound journals, a single photo of her shaking hands with a neurosurgery pioneer. The woman herself sat behind a sleek desk, silver hair pulled tight, her piercing green eyes locking onto Lydia the moment she stepped through the door. "Sit," Voss said, her voice calm but edged with steel. Lydia sank into the chair, her pulse hammering. "You've won the Grayson Fellowship," Voss began, a rare smile breaking her stern facade. "Mayo Clinic called this morning, your neural repair research, combining microsurgery and pharmacology, blew them away. Full loan forgiveness, $50,000 annual stipend, housing in Rochester. You're their top pick nationwide." Joy crashed over Lydia like a tidal wave, warm and dizzying. Debt-free. A future at Mayo. Validation for every night she'd hunched over microscopes while Claire slept off ski trips. She opened her mouth to thank Voss, but the doctor raised a hand, her smile vanishing. "That's the good news. Here's the bad." Voss slid a tablet across the desk, its screen glowing with a dark web forum post. Lydia's stomach plummeted. There, in stark pixels, was her research. Her charts, her notes, her methodology, twisted into something grotesque. The title screamed, "Unauthorized Infant Neural Trials, Harper Protocol." Her data had been altered, rewritten to look like she'd experimented on newborns, complete with fabricated patient logs and autopsy photos. "This hit the dark web last night," Voss said, her voice low. "Someone's trying to sabotage you before the official announcement tomorrow. If the Grayson Committee sees this and believes you ran illegal trials, you're not just losing the fellowship. You're looking at jail time, federal charges. Your career ends before it starts." Lydia stared at the screen, her own work now a weapon aimed at her throat. "Who would do this?" she whispered, though a name already festered in her mind. Nathan Pierce. Her rival since med school, brilliant but venomous, who'd sneered when she'd taken Voss's research slot 2 years ago. "Nathan's got motive," Voss confirmed, reading her thoughts. "He's been bitter since you outshone him. I can't prove it yet, but the timing's too perfect. He's got access to the lab servers." Lydia remembered his smirk at her first presentation, his muttered, "Luck runs out, Harper." She'd dismissed him as a sore loser. Now he'd struck at her jugular. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We fight," Voss said, leaning forward. "I've got IT tracing the leak. If we pin it on Nathan before the committee meets tomorrow noon, you're safe. Claire's party tonight might be our shot. He'll be there, gloating. We confront him publicly." Lydia nodded, her mind racing, when her phone buzzed again. She expected Voss with another update, but froze at the anonymous email staring back. "Ask Marion about the third birth. James wasn't an accident." The words hit like a punch, each syllable dripping with malice. Third birth, James, the receipt, her mother's cryptic confession. It was all connected. "Something wrong?" Voss asked, snapping her back. Lydia handed over the phone, hands shaking. Voss's brow furrowed as she read, then tapped the screen, pulling up metadata. Sent from a masked IP, but it pinged a legacy server at Detroit General, where Marion worked in the 90s. Too personal for Nathan alone. Someone fed him this. "My mom?" Lydia asked, the question tasting like bile. Marion had been a nurse there decades ago. Had she crossed paths with Nathan's family? Or was there a deeper betrayal buried in the Harper house? Voss's eyes narrowed. "Maybe. I don't trust coincidences. You need to talk to her now." Lydia stood, legs unsteady, when a crash echoed down the hall, a glass vial shattering on tile. She bolted out, Voss behind her, and found it glinting under the fluorescent lights, a broken syringe, its label peeling but legible. JH98. Her breath caught. JH98. The scrawl on the receipt. A shadow darted around the corner, too fast to chase. "What the hell is JH98? She demanded, turning to Voss. The doctor's face paled. "A banned trial from '98. Experimental neurostimulant." killed dozens of infants before it was shut down. If that's tied to your family, this isn't just sabotage. It's a cover-up. Lydia's mind spun. James. Clinical failure, JH98. Had her parents been part of something monstrous? Her phone rang, shattering the silence. A clipped voice from First National Bank. Ms. Harper, due to a credit irregularity, your student loan's been called in early. $120,000 due in 24 hours, or we pursue legal action. Have a good evening. The line went dead. She stared at the cracked syringe, the bank's ultimatum echoing with Voss's warning. This wasn't coincidence. Nathan, or someone bigger, wasn't just after her career. They wanted her buried. She drove back toward the Harper house, the receipt and email burning holes in her thoughts. The basement shadow, the lipstick threat, a memory flickered. 5 years old, tiptoeing past her parents' room, hearing Marion sob, "We can't lose another one." She'd thought it was about a patient. Now it felt like a confession. As she parked, her phone buzzed again. "Claire, Mom's freaking out. What's going on?" "I'm scared." Lydia's fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to reply, "What did they do to me?" But she didn't. Not yet. She stepped out, the wind biting harder, and heard it again. That metallic screech from the basement, closer now, like whatever was down there knew she was coming back. Lydia Harper stood outside the Harper house, the Detroit wind biting at her cheeks as the metallic screech from the basement echoed in her ears. Sharper now, insistent, like a beast stirring awake. The crumpled receipt, James, clinical failure, and the broken JH98 syringe weighed heavy in her satchel, their secrets clawing at her mind. Dr. Voss's words rang like an alarm. A banned trial, dead infants, a cover-up tied to her family, the anonymous email. "Ask Marion about the third birth. James wasn't an accident." Burned behind her eyes. And now, Claire's text. "Mom's freaking out. What's going on? I'm scared." Lydia's fingers tightened on her phone. She didn't reply. She couldn't, not until she had answers. She slipped inside with her spare key, the house eerily still. The kitchen lights flickered, casting long shadows over Marion's abandoned cupcakes. Thomas was at the hospital, but Marion's coat hung by the door. She was here, somewhere. Lydia's boots thudded softly on the hardwood as she approached the living room, her heart pounding. Marion stood there, mid-step, a tray of wine glasses trembling in her hands. "Mom?" Lydia said, her voice low but unyielding. "What's the third birth?" Marion's eyes widened, the tray slipping, glasses shattered across the floor like tiny bombs, wine pooling red as blood. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her face draining of color. "That's nonsense." "Don't lie to me," Lydia snapped, stepping closer, glass crunching underfoot. "I got an email. My research is leached, twisted into something illegal. It told me to ask you about James. The receipt from 98, clinical failure. JH98, on a syringe that nearly hit me tonight. You said Claire was the child you couldn't lose again. Was there another baby? Did you lose someone before us?" Marion's hands shook, her gaze darting to the basement door. Still ajar, still whispering. "You're imagining things," she whispered, too quick, too frail. "Stop this, please. It's Claire's day tomorrow." But the panic in her eyes was a confession of its own. Lydia's chest tightened, a storm of questions swirling. She lunged for Marion's coat, rifling the pockets as her mother gasped. Her fingers closed around a tattered leather journal, its edges frayed, its cover stained with age. She flipped it open, her breath catching at the jagged handwriting. JH98. Trial to save James. Neurostimulant overdose, chose wrong dose, he died at birth. Lydia lived but weak, forever. A final line, scrawled in red ink. Thomas insisted. I couldn't say no. Lydia's knees buckled. James, her brother, dead because of a desperate experiment. And her, weak forever? She'd fought asthma, fevers, fatigue her whole life. Was this why? You did this, Lydia choked, holding up the journal. Marian sank to the couch, sobbing, hands clawing at her hair. We had to try. James was dying, born too early, lungs failing. Thomas said JH98 could save him. It didn't. He was gone in hours. Then you were fading, hooked to machines. We used the last dose on you. It worked, but you were never strong like Claire. Lydia's vision blurred with tears, rage, and grief colliding. So you gave up on me? Decided I wasn't worth it? Marian reached for her, but Lydia recoiled. We were terrified, Marian wept. After James, we couldn't risk Claire. She was our second chance. Before Lydia could press further, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging or you'll end like him. Her pulse hammered. She shoved the journal into her satchel and stormed toward the basement door, Marian's cries fading behind her. The screech was louder now, rhythmic, like footsteps climbing. She grabbed a flashlight from the hall, her hand trembling as she pushed the door open. The stairs descended into pitch black, damp air thick with mildew. Halfway down, she froze. A figure stood at the bottom, shrouded in shadow, holding a crowbar. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stared up at her with unseen eyes. She bolted back upstairs, slamming the door, her heart in her throat. Who's down there? She yelled at Marian, who'd followed, pale and trembling. No one, Marian insisted, but her voice cracked. Lydia didn't buy it. She dialed Dr. Voss, breath ragged. I found a journal, she said when Voss picked up. JH98 killed my brother James. They used it on me too. There's someone in the basement, watching me. Voss's reply was sharp. Get out now. JH98 wasn't just a trial. It was a scandal. Dozens died. If your parents were in it, someone's still covering tracks. Bring the journal to me. Lydia grabbed her keys, but Marian clutched her arm. Don't go down there, she begged. You don't know what they'll do. Who? Lydia demanded, shaking her off. Marian's silence was deafening. As Lydia ran to her Chevy, the basement door creaked open behind her. Just an inch, but enough to hear slow, deliberate steps ascending. She floored the gas, tires squealing, the journal a lead weight in her lap. Her phone buzzed again. Claire, Mom locked herself in her room. Dad's yelling about old files. What's happening? She sped toward Michigan Med, the Detroit River a dark ribbon in her peripheral. Voss's warning echoed. A scandal, a cover-up. James wasn't just a loss, he was evidence. And her? A living test subject they'd written off. A memory flickered. 12 years old, finding Marian sobbing over a locked box in the attic, whispering, not again. She'd thought it was grief for a patient. Now it felt like guilt. The bank's 24-hour deadline loomed, Nathan's sabotage festered, and that figure in the basement, was it him or someone worse? As she pulled into the research wing, her headlights caught a flicker, a silhouette by the entrance, gone in a blink. Her grip tightened on the journal. Whatever JH98 was, it wasn't dead. It was hunting her, and the answers her parents buried were about to claw their way out, whether she survived them or not. The rooftop terrace of the upscale Detroit restaurant glittered under strings of Edison bulbs, a shimmering cage of celebration that felt like a guillotine to Lydia Harper. She stepped off the elevator, her navy dress clinging to her sweat-damp skin, the tattered JH98 journal tucked in her satchel like a loaded gun. A massive banner fluttered in the March breeze. Congratulations, Dr. Claire Harper, its gold letters erasing Lydia's existence. The crowd buzzed, with clinking glasses and forced laughter. Relatives, faculty, and hospital brass mingling around a cake emblazoned with Claire's name in icing. Lydia scanned the sea of faces for Nathan Pierce, the man who'd twisted her research into a lie, the shadow behind her sabotage. Tonight wasn't just Claire's party. It was her last stand. Dr. Evelyn Voss arrived moments later, a striking figure in a charcoal blazer, her silver hair glinting like a beacon. She pulled Lydia aside near a railing overlooking the city's jagged skyline. Nathan's here, Voss whispered, her voice a low growl. Corner table, smirking like he's untouchable. Stick to the plan. I'll announce the grace and you call him out. We end this now. Lydia nodded, her pulse hammering when Claire broke through the crowd, her silver cocktail dress shimmering. Lydia, Thank God, she said, linking their arms, her blonde bob bouncing with nervous energy. Aunt Sue's asking if I'm dating a cardiologist, and Mom's parading me around like a trophy. Why isn't this for both of us? The knot in Lydia's chest loosened a fraction. Claire's words were a crack in the wall between them, but before she could respond, Marion swooped in, wineglass in hand. Claire, the Wilsons are here. Chief of Staff from Cleveland Clinic. Come say hi. She tugged Claire away, then glanced at Lydia with a tight smile. Could you check the dessert table, dear? Uncle Jim's fussing about gluten again, relegated to errands while Claire hobnobbed with VIPs. Some things never changed. Lydia swallowed the bile in her throat and turned to Voss. They're burying me up here, she said. Voss's eyes glinted with steel. Not for long. Dinner unfolded in a blur of clattering plates and small talk, Lydia seated at a side table with cousins, while Thomas and Marion flanked Claire at the head, basking in Dr. Henry Tate's praise. Claire's residency app is stellar, Tate boomed, loud enough for Lydia to hear. Such grit. Thomas beamed. She's always been our fighter. The lie stung worse than the bank's 24-hour ultimatum. Then Voss stood, tapping her glass, her voice slicing through the chat. I have an announcement. Lydia Harper has won the Grayson Fellowship at Mayo Clinic, the top award for a graduating med student in the country. Full loan forgiveness, $50,000 stipend, and a neural repair study, already rewriting textbooks. Gasps rippled through the room, faculty swiveling to stare at Lydia, cousins whispering excitedly. Thomas stood, his smile forced. We're proud of Lydia, but let's not oversell it. She had Voss's help. Claire built her path alone. Nathan Pierce rose from his corner, glass raised like a toast to betrayal. I agree, he said, his voice oily. Word is, Lydia's research might not be hers, or worse, illegal infant trials. Ask Marion about JH98. The air turned electric, every eye on Lydia. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her legs. You're the leak, Nathan. I've got your IP. I traced from the dark web post. You're scared because I'm better than you. Voss held up her phone, screen glowing with evidence. IP confirmed. Nathan's done. His smirk vanished, glass slipping as he bolted for the elevator, the crowd parting in stunned silence. But the real explosion came from Marion. Stop this, Lydia! She shrieked, her wine glass shattering on the table. You're ruining everything. Don't dig up the past, Lydia whirled on her, years of silence combusting. What past, Mom? The third birth? JH98, the email said, you know why I'm expendable. Because you lost James and decided I wasn't worth saving. The terrace fell deathly quiet, a vacuum of shock. Marion crumpled to her knees, sobbing, hands clawing at the tablecloth. Yes, James? He died at birth. JH98 was supposed to save him. Thomas pushed it, said it'd work. It didn't, then you were dying, so we used it on you. You lived, but weak, always weak. We couldn't risk Claire. She was stronger. We were wrong, God, we were wrong. Thomas sank beside her, his face ashen. We didn't mean to hurt you, Lydia. We were terrified after him. We couldn't lose another. Tears burned Lydia's eyes. A flood of grief for a brother she'd never known, rage for a family that had mourned her before she'd lived. Claire stumbled forward, mascara streaking her cheeks, and threw her arms around Lydia. I didn't know, she choked. They dosed you to save me? I'm pulling my residency app from Detroit. You deserve this night, not me. No, Lydia said, clutching her twin. Don't give it up. We both deserve it. I just needed them to see me. Suddenly, a boom rocked the venue. Smoke billowed from the kitchen, screams piercing the air. They know! Someone yelled. Nathan's abandoned glass rolled across the floor, a cracked JH98 vial beside it. A figure darted through the chaos, a glint of steel in hand. A knife. Voss grabbed Lydia's arm, pulling her back. That's not Nathan. He got out. Someone else is here. The The crowd scattered, faculty shoving past tables, Thomas shielding Marion as Claire clung to Lydia. Who? Lydia demanded, her voice raw. Voss's eyes darkened. JH98 wasn't just your parents, it was a network. Doctors, funders, still alive, they've been watching. The figure vanished into the smoke, but the knife's gleam lingered in Lydia's mind. Her research, her life, her family. All targets in a war she hadn't started. Claire's grip tightened, her sobs shaking them both. I'm so sorry, Lyd. I didn't know what they took from you. Lydia held her close, the journal's weight a reminder of the truth they'd uncovered. The Grayson was hers, Nathan was exposed, but the cost was a family in tatters and a threat still breathing in the shadows. As sirens wailed in the distance, Lydia whispered, "We'll figure it out together." But deep down she knew whatever had climbed from that basement wasn't done with her yet. The rooftop terrace dissolved into chaos as smoke curled from the shattered kitchen, sirens wailing in the Detroit night. Lydia Harper stood rooted beside Claire, their hands clasped tight, tears mingling in the March wind. Marion's broken confession, "We used JH98 on you," echoed louder than the screams around them. Thomas knelt by Marion near the toppled cake, a tableau of guilt and grief, while faculty scattered like startled birds. Dr. Evelyn Voss's words cut through. They've been watching. The knife-wielding shadow from the chaos lingered in Lydia's mind, a ghost tied to the journal in her satchel, the journal that named James, her lost brother, and branded her a survivor of a deadly trial. Claire's sobs snapped her back. "You were weak because of me," her twin whispered, mascara streaking her silver dress. "I'm so sorry, Lyd." Lydia pulled her closer, the warmth of their embrace a lifeline. "It's not your fault," she said, voice thick. They made choices. We're fixing them now. The Grayson Fellowship was hers, debt erased, a future at Mayo Clinic secured. Nathan Pierce exposed and gone, but the cost was a family unmasked and a threat still breathing. As fire crews stormed the terrace, Voss ushered them to the elevator. "We need that journal safe," she said. "And you two, stick together." Lydia drove Claire back to the Harper house, the city a blur of red and blue lights. The journal sat between them, its red-inked confession. Thomas insisted. A silent witness. "I'm not taking their money anymore," Claire said, her voice firm despite the tremble. "I'll redo my residency app somewhere small, on my terms. You showed me what real strength is." Lydia glanced at her, a flicker of pride piercing the ache. "You don't have to prove anything," she said. "Just don't let them define you." Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. "Will redefine us?" The house loomed dark and quiet, the basement door still ajar. Lydia's gut twisted, those footsteps, that shadow. She grabbed a flashlight in Claire's hand. "We're ending this," she said. They crept downstairs, the air thick with damp and rust. At the bottom, a rusty filing cabinet stood pried open, papers strewn across the concrete. Lydia's beam caught a small urn, its brass etched. James Harper, March 3, 1998. Beside it, a dusty cassette player. A tape labeled 4J. Claire pressed play and Marion's voice crackled through, raw and broken. "James, Mommy's sorry. We tried to save you. Lydia, you're our last light. Forgive us." Lydia's knees buckled, tears spilling as she clutched the urn. Claire sank beside her, tracing the date, 3 days before their birth. "They never told me his name," Claire whispered. "I thought it was a story." Lydia's voice broke. "They were scared I'd die like him, so they bet on you. But I'm still here." Claire grabbed her hand. "You're more than here. You're unstoppable." The tape's static faded, leaving silence heavier than the dark. They'd lost James, and in their terror, their parents had lost Lydia too, marking her weak, expendable. The doorbell jolted them upright. Thomas and Marion stood in the doorway as they climbed back up, faces etched with shame. Marion clutched a tissue. Thomas, a small box. "You found him?" Marion said, voice cracking at the urn in Lydia's arms. We couldn't save James, Thomas said, his glasses fogging. JH-98 was our last hope. Then you, Lydia. We thought you'd never make it. Claire was our safety. He opened the box, a vial of JH-98, its liquid glinting. We kept this. It could fix you, make you strong. Lydia stared at the vial, the drug that killed her brother and cursed her childhood. I don't need fixing, she said, her voice steady. I made it without you. Through asthma, through nights I couldn't breathe, through every time you chose her. Keep it. She pushed the box back, Claire's hand anchoring her. We'll talk, Claire said to their parents, firm but gentle. But not now, we need time. Marion reached out, but Lydia stepped back, the urn cold against her chest. Thomas's shoulders slumped, the weight of decades crashing down. 3 weeks later, Lydia stood in her bare Rochester apartment, boxes stacked from Mayo Clinic. The Grayson was hers, Nathan's sabotage buried by Voss's evidence. Her phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Saved my first patient today, a kid with a skull fracture, stable because of your neural repair notes. Love you. Another from Voss. Your studies in the journals. A 7-year-old in Texas walked out of ICU because of you. You're the future. Lydia smiled, tears welling as she set James's urn on the windowsill beside a faded photo. Her and Claire, 6 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, unaware of the ghosts between them. James, she whispered, touching the urn. I made it for all of us. The ache of her parents' choices lingered, a scar she'd carry, but it no longer ruled her. She'd forged a path through their ashes, through lies, into hope. Claire was carving her own way, free of their shadow, but as she turned off the lights, her laptop pinged, an email from an unknown sender. JH-98 isn't dead. We're still here. Her breath caught, a faint knock echoed from her door. 3 slow taps in the dark. She crept to the peephole, heart pounding. Nothing, no one, just the empty hall stretching into shadow. She locked the deadbolt, the urn glinting in the moonlight. Had Marion or Thomas sold JH-98 secrets, as Nathan hinted? Was that network Voss warned of still hunting? The questions gnawed, unanswered, a thread dangling into the void. Lydia sank onto her couch, Claire's text glowing on her phone. A lifeline. Whatever came next, she wasn't alone. But the knocks lingered in her ears, a promise that this wasn't over. Hey, you! Her voiceover cut in, soft but fierce. Think that knock was Nathan or something bigger? Drop your theories below. I read every one. This fight's not done, and I need you with me. The screen faded to black, James's urn a silent sentinel in the frame.